Welcome back to Ta-da 3D printing. So I've been looking for a boat or Benchy that actually floats, and I found this Bathtub Boat on printables. It's by Van Dragon D, and there are two different file options. There is a more simple boat and a little bit more elaborate. They both say simple, but the first one has a little bit more on it. So I'm going to go ahead and download that. I pulled it into Slicer, and the 100% scale, just the regular size, it's a little under 4 inches long, or about 100 millimeters. I'm going to turn it 45 because when I do the final large print, I'm going to have to do the 45, so I'm going to start that. I do want to print this fast, so I'm going to go with the 0.4 draft on the layer height, and I'm going to do the infill a little bit less. I'm going to have 5%, and I'm going to switch to lightning. This first kind of test print, it's not a big deal if this takes a while, but I want to use the same settings so I have an idea when I make this larger. With these settings, it's going to take just over an hour. I've been really liking the multicolor filament, so I ordered a silk multicolor from Overture. This one is silk and it's purple and gold. And it is a true dual color. You can see the purple and then the gold on the other side. So it's not going to be a rainbow that shifts. It's going to have, the filament is going to have both colors completely through. And here is the little bit that I snipped off so you can see that it's purple and gold. It's just half and half, two colors on this filament. Okay, let's get this started. I've used plenty of the silk filament from Overture, but I've never used a dual color at all from Overture, so I'm really curious how this will compare with the emollients that I've tried before. I used the satin sheet and I didn't have any problems with it printing, and I think it turned out really good. I really am liking this dual color. You can see the purple on this side. It printed very smooth. This is 0.4 draft quality, so I'm pretty happy with how it looks overall. I am seeing a little bit of lines along the front there, and some of the details I do see are not super smooth. That's kind of what I was figuring would happen, but I don't see anything kind of dented in or anything on the bottom. And all of the pieces did print, so I think that'll work, and then I really want to see how this will look when it scales up. But I love this color. I think it looks really cool. Okay, so I'm going to move forward and see how it looks when I scale it up to the max size. I go back to Prusa Slicer, and a couple of you had given me comments about how to easily scale it up rather than just guessing on the size. So I right-clicked on the model and clicked Scale to Print Volume, and it automatically will scale it up to the largest size possible. And this is a little over 428%, so it really maxed out the print volume. So it's saying it's going to be 14 inches or 355 millimeters, but that is also at the diagonal. So I know that once I straighten it out, it's going to be longer. This print, even with the lightning infill, is going to take just over a day, and it's going to be almost an entire roll of filament, 952 grams. So it's really going to max it out. I get the print started first thing in the morning, and I happen to catch it before I go to work, and I realize that I have this kind of funny first layer going on. It doesn't look like it's printing all the way across, so I really want to check this out. That looks like too big of a space to be bridging. So I go back into the slicer and I look at the bottom, and sure enough, there is just a little bit of a smooth curve, and that first layer is not going to print quite right. You can see it right there. It's going to print, and then the next things are going to print almost in space, which is unnecessary for something that should be flat on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and slice off just a little bit off the bottom of this, because I really, as big as this is, I really want it to have a flat bottom, and it'll print much better that way. I'm really glad that I caught it on that first layer, because with as much filament as this is going to take, I only had one roll, and I really would have been up a creek if I had let it go on much farther. So I just slice off the first layer or two, and it looks like it's going to be smooth now, so I can proceed and get this thing printing. It's not really going to change the overall length of the print, so I really am anxious to get this going. That first layer looks much better. It's going all the way across the print. That is exactly what I wanted. I looked back at the smaller one, and I didn't see that it printed like that on the regular scale, but sometimes when you make these things a lot bigger. Things that don't show up on the small print will show up. So just a little bit of curve. That happened on the gummy bear print too. The bottom on the smaller scale wasn't a big deal, but the full size was. And it's kind of fun to see this printing. You can see the lightning in there. It is very hollow inside of it. I'm really surprised that there is just very, very minimal infill going on. It does make me wonder if I had done grid or a higher infill, how much more filament and how much more time this would have taken. Now we're starting to see the top layer, or underneath the top layer, starting to come through, and it still looks a little bit rough. This is the 0.4 draft, and I really haven't printed a whole lot with that, just maybe the finial, which was very, didn't really have a top layer like this. So I'm anxious to see how the quality will turn out on it. I'm going to speed this last little bit up so you can just see it come together. This is a pretty giant boat, and it does come off the print bed pretty easily. Overall, the outside of the boat looks pretty smooth. The color shift is really pretty. But there definitely are some details. The very, very top looks very smooth, but both of these decks, the top of the roof there and the deck in there, is not very smooth. I'm sure if I printed with a lower layer height that wouldn't have shown, but I really wanted to print fast. Here you can see that it really would hang off the print bed if it was straight, so it is a very large size print. And some of the details, now that they're scaled up, they look better overall, these little things on top of the deck, but like the front bow right there, there's a little bit of stringing. The ladder looks pretty good. Underneath feels a little bit hollow. And right there, it does look a little bit punched in, just a little bit on the front of the boat on both sides. But the color looks nice. In some of the arches, the doorways, that sort of thing, there's some things hanging that didn't turn out quite right. Yeah, I mean, overall the quality, I think, would have been a little bit better, but it turned out pretty good. I am pretty happy with it. Okay, so the whole goal was, does it float? Let's start with the smaller one. And it does float. The Benchies always flip over right away, but this one is floating. It's doing good, even with a little bit of pushing waves against it. It's good. If I do turn it on its side, it does flip over. It is still a little bit top heavy, but overall is much better than a Benchy. Even with a little bit of water on that deck, it does float again. So I am really impressed with this. Let's see what the big size looks like. So this one's going to be quite a bit heavier, and it also floats. It does really well. I'm surprised. I really thought after a second it would flip. It looks good, and even just kind of shifting it a little bit, it does stay upright. I'm sure if I flipped it on its side, it would do the same thing as the other one. But this boat, no matter the size or scale, does float. I'm very impressed with this. I would print it at a little bit lower layer height, but I love it. The full length is a little bit over 16 inches or a little over 405 millimeters, so it really is a very giant boat, and I am very impressed that it floats. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.